You're listening to The Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to The Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Haristadoulou, and today is the day NFL kickoff for the 2024 regular season is finally here. We are breaking down each and every single game, all 16 matchups we have this week, tonight, tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday. I'm inviting you all to comment down below. I want to hear your game predictions, your thought on my predictions. And on top of that, as a reminder, because it seems to get forgotten, I do not gamble. I'm not giving you gambling advice. I am breaking down football games and picking the winners and losers based off of what I know about the teams and what I know about football. This is not a gambling channel. I am here to pick some winners. You are more than welcome to do what you want with the information, but just know that. I don't want anyone to think I'm some gambling guru. I am not. My record last year was 172-100. I have a overall career quote-unquote average of a 62.3% hit rate on picking winners, so I do a pretty decent job. But that being said, we're diving into the first matchup tonight, Thursday Night Football. The Ravens head into Kansas City to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is one AFC rematch. All eyes on the Super Bowl champions as they go to try and make history this season, going 3 straight back-to-back Super Bowl wins. But the Ravens may have something to say with that. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, the 1-2 punch combo everyone's been talking about all offseason here on the offensive side of things. But on the defensive side, a group that I'm going to be keeping an eye on is going to be Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, Brandon Stevens, and Marlon Humphrey, the defensive backfield. I think that group is going to have a tall task in taking on what is going to be a rejuvenated passing attack in Kansas City that unfortunately won't have Marquise Brown, but you have Xavier Worthy coming in here, Rashee Rice, who emerged last season as well as an effective wide receiver for the team here, coupled with the fact that they have a running back room that now has Samaje Perine, but you also have someone like Isaiah Pacheco who runs angrier than anyone I've ever seen in my life. And a defense led by guys like Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, but you also have another deep group of defensive linemen with like George Karlaftis. You have Mike Dana, Derek Nandi. This is a really stout defense, an offense that is led by Patrick Mahomes, and I think that the Ravens do have some work cut out for them. Some things that I'm thinking about in this matchup here, and one thing that's really weighing on my mind as we go into this new season is going to be what the defense looks like altogether in Baltimore. Fantastic group last year. They were number 1 in sacks. They were number 2 in red zone defense. They were a great group altogether. They did struggle against the run a little bit, but overall it was a phenomenal defense to work with. Now Zach Orr takes over as coach Mike McDonald has taken over the Seattle job. I'm curious to see how things change schematically, how much they don't potentially change, and just what this defense looks like week to week as opposed to how it did last year and what was like a peak form for them. The offensive line is restructured a little bit as well. That is definitely something worth keeping an eye on here. And I'm also looking at Zay Flowers in this matchup too, because when I look at Baltimore, obviously in need of like a true wide receiver 1, he definitely stepped up for the role last season and broke out. Unfortunately, a lot of people just remember the fumble, but I do think that Zay Flowers has the opportunity to be that legit number 1 for this Ravens team. So he's someone to keep an eye on here. How does he evolve in this offense and what does his role look like? Although everyone is while everyone is sitting there hyper focused on Lamar, Derrick Henry, how do you defend that? There are guys on this offense you need to look at that are also standout players. And I look at Zay Flowers and he's one of those guys I'm keeping an eye on. For the Chiefs side of things, I do have the big question, of course, about the mistakes last year on offense, the drops, things like that. Does that get left behind in 2023? Does it come back and, pop up again this year? That is the last thing you want to have happen. I'm looking at Xavier Worthy and the role that he is given in this offense and how he carves it out the remainder of the season as well. But also, when I mentioned Trent McDuffie earlier, I am very curious who steps up alongside him in that secondary. That is a group that is very young. Besides him, he is the all-pro, the leader now that L'Jarius Sneed is gone. Who steps up alongside him to help shut down some of these passing attacks they're going to be facing as they go through the season? But overall, though, I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I do expect maybe a little bit lower of a scoring affair. It's not going to be some high-flight offensive matchup, especially early in the season. It feels like offenses take a little bit to really get clicking and going here, and you have two really good defenses going head-to-head here in week number one. I do, however, think I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs as the winner for this matchup here. I have learned in the past that betting against Patrick Mahomes and these Chiefs is not the way to go. And by betting, I mean just picking against them as winners. And I found that out in the playoffs last year trying to pick the Ravens over them, and they just couldn't quite get it done. Although just like a mistake or two away from potentially stealing that game. But they didn't get it done nonetheless. I think I like Kansas City just a hair more, though, and my questions in regards to what this defense looks like with a new defensive coordinator, with a guy like Patrick Queen, who departed this offseason as well, gone. I feel like I can trust Kansas City just a tiny pinch more, and unfortunately, I'm in the position right now as well where I feel like if it's hard to pick against Kansas City, and I need to see people do it before I can like pick them to do it. And the Ravens have taken down Kansas City while Patrick Mahomes is there. Lamar Jackson has done it while he's been in Baltimore too, but it's been a while since that loss in week 2 of the season a couple of years ago. So I'm going to take KC 23-20. I think it's going to be a really fun contest though. The next game we're looking at down south in Brazil, we have the Green Bay Packers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. For me, all eyes on the offense. Jordan Love, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs. Which one of those 3 guys really steps up and becomes that number 1? I feel like Christian Watson has kind of been that guy, but does he really come to fruition this year and become the number 1 for Jordan Love? Who of those 3 guys really steps up? Because I look at Doubs as like, he's the guy that has like the really big flashy highlight plays. Christian Watson puts up a lot of numbers, and Jaden Reed really carved out a nice role for himself as well last year. So you have a really fun group of guys on offense for Jordan Love to throw to. And then defensively, that defensive line, I cannot go without mentioning these guys here. Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, and TJ Slayton. Those guys are tasked with going up against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, so I'll be watching how they fare in that matchup there. On the Eagles side of things, obviously, Jalen Hurts coming back to form is what I'm going to be looking for, getting back to how he was playing, maybe not last season, but the season prior. And then, of course, the addition of Saquon Barkley and Cam Jurgens in the center spot taking over for Jason Kelce. This is probably the best team that Saquon Barkley has been on, that he wasn't the best guy. So he has a really good opportunity to see some wide open running lanes in kind of a way that he never got to see when he was in New York. So I think that's going to bode really well for him. And I know there's a lot of conversation around Jason Kelce departing from the Eagles and how this offensive line is going to look without him there. The good news, in my opinion, is that Philadelphia drafted Cam Jurgens for this very job. This was the plan all along. I think Jason Kelce maybe stuck around a little bit longer than Philadelphia thought he would because he was weighing retirement for a while, but he is ready for this, in my opinion. I know Jason Kelce made sure he was ready for this, and he has been making sure this past offseason that he's ready for this here. I feel really good about him slotting into the spot. I think the Eagles may miss Jason Kelce ultimately, but I think Cam Jurgens is going to be a guy that really helps to mitigate that loss. Defensively, I'm really looking at the secondary, specifically the cornerback room, because, of course, you have Darius Slay Jr. defeating Father Time year in and year out, well over 30 now at this point in his career, and he's still one of the best to do it. Then you also have Isaiah Rodgers, a guy who was suspended the whole year last year, but was an up-and-coming corner in the Colts defense before ultimately getting dealt that year's suspension for gambling. And then you have rookies like Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. It's an entirely reworked secondary that's going to look vastly different than how it did last season. And I think with that in mind, when you see the struggles that they had against the pass last year, being 31st in the league against it, and also on top of that, finishing the year 30 in points per game, 30th with the red zone defense, I will really be interested in how this secondary fares this season, because if that can get better, it'll put them in a much better situation, not only game by game, but even like the pressure that's on the offense right now to come back and bounce back. If the defense could be a little bit better, that would probably be nice for them as well. When I look at the Packers, though, overall, I'm very interested in what Jeff Hafley is going to bring to this defense here. And then you, of course, have the addition of running back Josh Jacobs, who I haven't even mentioned yet. I think with the way this offense is geared right now in Green Bay, it's a very pass-first offense. Josh Jacobs in a similar situation with Saquon Barkley in that the lanes might be a little bit more open because the passing attack was so potent last year in Green Bay. Teams have to respect that, and Josh Jacobs should be able to take advantage of that. And then the other thing, I'm just very curious to see Jordan Love, if he's going to be able to quiet the doubters. I like Jordan Love. I wasn't always on the Jordan Love train, but I have jumped on it. as of late. I would say probably during like the midpoint of last season when he started to catch fire, I was like, okay, this is it. Here we go. Round number 3 with the Green Bay Packers and a franchise quarterback. I'm excited to see what he does. I think he's going to prove some doubters wrong. I feel like there's just too much talent in Green Bay right now for them to fail. And Jordan Love would have to really lay an egg this year to ultimately be a flop like some people are anticipating, thinking he's overpaid. We'll see, but I like where he's coming from and where I think he's going. The Eagles, the issues from last year are definitely weighing heavy on my mind, and that revamped secondary is definitely something I'm not concerned about. More so, I just need to see what they're going to be. And again, I'm not too worried about the Jason Kelce loss. Obviously, one of the best to ever do it. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I do think that this offensive line will be okay. I think they've been preparing Cam Jurgens for this role, and Jason Kelce has been a big part of that as well. So I'm not too worried about that. But what scares me the most about this Eagles team is just whatever happened last year that caused that fall off a cliff. I really hope it doesn't roll over into this year, and that's kind of what's giving me some reservation about Philly. With all that said, though, as for who I think is going to win, I think I am leaning Green Bay in this one here, just because I feel like I can trust them a little bit more. I understand the talent that is in Philadelphia and the expectations that are in Philadelphia right now, but last season is weighing heavily on my mind, and I know it's last season, but Nick Sirianni was still there as head coach, and it sounds like some of the problem was between he and Jalen Hurts, and that is something that is weighing heavily on my mind right now. So I'll take Green Bay. I like them for a tight victory, 20-17. Feels like these overseas games are always a little bit of a lower scoring affair, but I'll take the Packers. Moving into Sunday's matchups now, we have ourselves the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into Atlanta to take on the Falcons. The big thing for me with the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, and especially going into this matchup here, is how this offensive line is going to look. Left tackle is going to be Broderick Jones. Your left guard, Isaac Seumalo, is actually out for this game here, so his backup will be starting for him. Center Zach Frazier, rookie, will be leading in the spot there. James Daniels got the right guard position, and then Troy Fatanu, another rookie, holding down the right tackle spot. There's a lot of youth, and now you're dealing with an injury as well on this O-line here. Definitely something worth me keeping an eye on. And then in the defensive side of things, I'm looking at the secondary with Joey Porter Jr., second-year guy, looked really good last year. Dante Jackson's coming in from Carolina. And then you have a nickelback in Beanie Bishop Jr., who was a just undrafted free agent taking over the slot now for the defense. I think that's a fun and exciting story to follow, but I'm curious to see what the lead cornerbacks look like this season for the D. When I look at the Falcons, the offense, it really is just Kirk Cousins and what he does with those skill talent they have over there. Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London should be benefiting from a guy like Kirk Cousins under center. How far he takes those guys, I will be very curious to see. Defensively, with the trade for Matthew Judon, I'm now looking at Lorenzo Carter and Matthew Judon to help bring this pass rush to life in Atlanta, because that was probably one of their biggest issues last year. They finished the league 21st in sacks. They were not great at creating pressure and getting after the quarterback. If those two guys can step up and wreak some havoc, I think that this defense overall could take a really big step forward in going from a great defense into an elite level type of defense. As for the matchup, though, as a whole here, we're looking at two really good defenses. I know I just talked Atlanta here, but it's not like the Steelers' defense was a slouch by any means. They finished last year 6 in points allowed, 11 in sacks. I mean, they were a great group altogether. Their biggest issue was honestly just they let teams move a lot, but they didn't let them score a lot. So great defense for the most part altogether when you look at Pittsburgh and what they can do there. Guys like TJ Watt, of course, and Alex Highsmith, a fantastic pairing on the outsides there. Like, you have a really good defense in Pittsburgh. I'm not worried about them. The question marks for me, and these teams both have big question marks in the same spot, and it's pretty similar on the offensive side of things, is just how do these quarterbacks work out for both these teams? Can Russell Wilson be the savior of the offense in Pittsburgh? Can Kirk Cousins be the savior of the offense in Atlanta? Like, when it comes to like what these two teams are trying to do and figure out offensively, it's 1-to-1. It's basically the same exact thing. Is their new quarterback going to help elevate this offense to the level it should be at based off the surrounding talent? Whichever one of those quarterbacks does a better job, I do think leads this team to victory. That being said, for who I think is going to win the matchup here, I am leaning a little bit more Atlanta. It helps that it's in Atlanta, and that makes me feel a little bit better about them being at home. But also, I will say that when I look at like starting wide receiver, or just like wide receiver 1, tight end 1, running back 1, I give a slight edge to Atlanta. I would say that I'd probably take George Pickens over Drake London, but I would probably take Kyle Pitts over Pat Freiermuth for pure athleticism alone more than anything else. Even if like Freiermuth has been more productive than Kyle Pitts, I don't necessarily know what their numbers are compared off the top of my head, but pure athleticism and size alone, I'd probably take Kyle Pitts. And then running back, I'd take Bijan Robinson and his potential upside. So I do give like a slight edge talent-wise to Atlanta. So that would be why I'm going with the Falcons here. I have them winning a tight one, 23-21. Again, whichever quarterback is the savior of their offense in this game here and going forward, I think leads the team to victory because you got two really good defenses, offenses that have a lot of talent. The offensive lines are about comparable. That's also something I might give a slight edge to the Falcons to as well, just because, again, a lot of youth, and then the injury at left guard for the Steelers is something to keep an eye on. But I think this is a tight one, but give me the Falcons 23-21. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills taking on the Arizona Cardinals. And I'll say this, if there's a team that's poised to maybe regress this year, it could be the Buffalo Bills. And I'm sorry to say that, Buffalo fans, but that's just kind of the reality that I'm looking at right now. When I look at the offense, the wide receiver room, vastly different. Khalil Shakir is the tenured guy on the team. He's leading guys like Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel into the fray here. The tight end room is really fun over there in Buffalo, and I think we could see a lot of 12 personnel just because of the talent that you have there with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. But there is a lot to replace in terms of just receptions lost with Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs being gone. You also, on the defensive side, have seen a lot of changing there. Matt Milano is also out for the season again. The back end of your defense is now going to be led by Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin instead of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. So there is a lot of changing just going on altogether in Buffalo. The Cardinals, on the other side, I would still consider one of the more talent-depleted rosters in the NFL, but it's, I guess, getting better. But, I mean, you have Kyler Murray, you have Marvin Harrison, you have Michael Wilson. You also have like Greg Dortch over there as well, who is, I know he's a fan favorite in Arizona. And then defensively, you don't have a ton to be excited about, but a group I'm looking at specifically, just not even just this in this game, but in the season altogether, that like defensive front with your outside linebackers and like Zaven Collins and Dennis Gardeck, and then the interior of the defensive line, you have Bilal Nichols, Justin Jones, and Roy Lopez. This was a team that was 30th in sacks last year and just did not generate a ton of pressure, and they really struggled on third downs as well. They've got to get better up front. They've got to win on third downs, and the offense, hopefully with Kyler Murray back in the fold, getting the offseason to really get himself, back and integrated into the offense going into the season rather than joining at the midpoint like he did last year coming back from injury. There is a lot of just, I need to see things come to fruition before I can buy the Arizona Cardinals right now. So while I do have questions about Buffalo and just the turnover and where they are currently as a team, I do still think they are a better team, but I do have my worries about Buffalo. That being said, though, for this matchup specifically, I will take the Bills. I will take the Bills pretty comfortably at that, and I have them winning 24-13. Arizona might be able to hang around and keep it close. Maybe it ends up being a little bit closer than I'm anticipating, but there is still enough talent on the Buffalo Bills. Like, I'm a big fan of James Cook. I'm a big fan of the tight end room. I know we talked a lot about the wide receivers, but the tight end room in Buffalo is really fun. Dalton Kincaid was an awesome guy to watch last year, and I think his role is going to increase heavily this year with the changing at wide receiver so much. So I like Buffalo a lot. I definitely think they have more talent than Arizona at this current moment here. But I do have some concerns going down the road that we will talk about as the season progresses and how things shake out. Next, we look at the Tennessee Titans and the Chicago Bears. This one here, you have a team in the Tennessee Titans where I think people are not really sure what to expect, and then you have the Chicago Bears that have every expectation in the world and then some right now being thrown on top of them, and a little bit unfairly in my opinion. When I look at Tennessee, the offensive line is one thing I'm really focusing on, especially going into game number 1 here with the offensive line kind of falling to the wayside over the last few years and not being quite as dominant as I feel like I have seen offensive lines in Tennessee over the duration of my NFL fanhood. This is one that I would like to see kind of get back to being what it used to be, and that is just a like smash mouth dominant group of guys that can open up running lanes but are also serviceable enough in the passing game as well. But I mean, the way you're looking at it right now, it's a pretty young group, or just new guys and new faces as far as the offensive line is concerned. You got J.C. Latham at left tackle, Peter Skoronski at left guard, Lloyd Cushenberry joining the team this offseason at center. You got Dylan Reduns at right guard, and then, of course, Nicholas Pete Friere over on the right side there. So I'll be watching that group specifically. The cornerbacks or just secondary, I guess I should say, as a whole, not even just the corners. The secondary as a whole is something I'll really be keeping an eye on because that saw a lot of changing this offseason on the defense. L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie are taking over the left and right cornerback spots. You also have Quandre Diggs coming in to work the free safety spot. Jamal Adams was brought in, and he's not even listed as a starter right now. He's currently listed as the second string guy, so that's something to keep an eye on as well. He's on a prove-it deal himself, but there's a lot of retooling going on as far as the secondary has been concerned over there in Tennessee, and something definitely worth keeping an eye on. On the Bears side of things, though, of course, everyone's talking. Caleb Williams, the wide receivers, DeAndre Swift joining in the backfield as well. You got Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore. The offense is going to be an exciting group to watch. I'm really looking forward to it. But I do have some reservations. One, that you have a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. Does the pressure get to him? How does he handle an offensive line that hasn't necessarily been perfect over the last handful of years? Do we see improvement from that offensive line this year, or do we see a regression with the changing that we got from that group this offseason? Like, there are things to consider. It's not just going to be Rose's Dandelions 28 points a game type of stuff from the Chicago Bears. Like, that's extremely optimistic, and it would be fun to see, but I'm trying to be realistic here. And even the Bears coaching staff has kind of said, don't be shocked and frustrated when there are growing pains, because it is Caleb Williams' first year. And for what it's worth, he gets all these comparisons to Patrick Mahomes. You all need to remember, Patrick Mahomes didn't play year one. He got a season to sit and cook and learn behind Alex Smith before he took over and threw 50 touchdowns on everybody. So just temper your expectations and try to be a little bit realistic. I look at the Chicago Bears like a team that could probably win 10 games this year, but for me to see people picking them to win the Super Bowl, and for me to see people like picking them as divisional winners and legitimate playoff contenders, I understand a lot of good happened last season, but there are things that you are looking at that you need to see improvement from. Like on the defensive line, Andrew Billings, Javon Dexter Sr., and DeMarcus Walker, they all need to step up and be a threat alongside of Montez Sweat when it comes to creating pressure and that pass rush there. It can't just be the Montez Sweat show. Like, we need to get contributions from those guys as well over there. And also on top of that, it's a new year with a new offense as well. Like, this is Shane Waldron coming in here, and now his job is to try to unlock the potential of Caleb Williams. Like, nothing's established here offensively. Everyone thinks to like the potential that they had prior to this season is just going through the roof now because we got a new OC and a new quarterback and more talent. Like, it's got to work first. So just have realistic expectations. That all being said, I do think I like the Bears a little bit more than I do the Titans in this matchup here. I think that there are definitely some questions to be had as far as Will Levis and just how far he can go as a quarterback. I'm curious, with a group of pass catchers that they have built around him that include DeAndre Hopkins and now Calvin Ridley as well, just how far they can go. But I have my uncertainties on the O-line and my uncertainties surrounding Will Levis. I think the defense should look a little bit better than it did last year, which was like an average to slightly below average group last year, except for in the red zone. For whatever reason, they were a fantastic group in the red zone, best in the NFL. But I think that the defense will probably improve a little bit. Offense, I'm not really too sure about. And then as far as the Bears go, it's an exciting year. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think they kicked the season off 1-0, but it's going to be like a 20-16 victory. I'd be shocked to see the Chicago Bears just come out and stomp the Titans in week number 1. There's going to be growing pains. Try to keep your expectations realistic, Chicago fans. Your team's going to be good. Just don't get upset if it's not fantastic. That's all I'm saying. Next game, we have the Patriots going into Cincinnati. And I really wish I had some way that I could spin the Patriots having a chance at winning this football game, but I don't really know if I do. And I am genuinely very concerned with what the Patriots are going to look like this year. And I would not be shocked if this team does not win more than 3 games. And I wouldn't even be shocked if this team wins only 1 game. The offensive line, and this has been kind of beat to death already, but it's definitely something that needs to be reiterated, looked awful against the Washington Commanders. Like, that was not what you wanted to see from your starting O-line going up against a bunch of backups in Washington. I'm genuinely concerned. I will say, though, that there are things that I'm looking forward to seeing from the Patriots. You've got a lot of young guys offensively. Jalen Polk, Demario Douglas, KJ Osborne is not a young guy, but a new guy coming in, new face for the offense. Defensively, Keon White, Daniel Ekuale is going to see some more time than anticipated because of the Christian Barmore blood clot situation. Josh Uche, Christian Gonzalez, all younger guys. Uche been around a little bit longer, but he gets an increased role now that Matthew Judon's gone. There's a lot of young talent that I'm really looking forward to seeing, so I'm excited to see where the Patriots go. I just don't expect a lot from them. The Bengals on the other side, Jamar Chase, he's there, he's practicing. He's been unhappy with the whole contract situation thing, even though he's only in his 2nd year, not his 3rd. So interesting situation there, but I'm not too worried about it. You also have Joe Burrow coming back. He's getting a full off season, training camp, preseason under his belt, in what feels like the first time ever in his career. And then you got a guy like Zach Moss coming in, who I think earned himself a running back 1 opportunity in Indy last year before Jonathan Taylor came back. I'm really excited for Cincinnati and what the offense could be. I will be really interested in how the back end of the secondary looks, especially with Geno Stone and Von Bell being paired together now. Von Bell, a Cincy fan favorite, coming back after being gone for a season. Geno Stone leading the league in picks last year. And then Dax Hill, who was a safety, who ended up stealing a cornerback spot as he transitioned from safety to corner. So very interesting stuff going on the defensive side of the Cincinnati Bengals as well. I think for me, though, when I look at just like big picture, big question marks, does the defense in Cincinnati bounce back after what was kind of a down year for them, which, to be fair, wasn't really helped by the situation on the offensive side of the ball, losing Joe Burrow as well. And then for the Patriots, I am very curious what this defense looks like when they now don't have Matthew Judon. Christian Barmore is also going to be out for however knows how long, potentially the whole season. I don't know who is like the legit number 1 wide receiver on this roster, and the offensive line has not really looked promising. I wish the Patriots the best of luck. I'm going to take the Bengals in this one, 28-14. I don't think it'll be super ugly, but it won't be great on the Patriots' end. And if they wind up pulling off an upset win, we have got a lot to talk about with Cincinnati then. Next, we'll look at a divisional matchup in Indianapolis as Houston comes on in to take on the Colts. Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon are the 2 guys I'm really interested in seeing here. Joe Mixon, obviously being a longtime stud in Cincinnati, taking his talents down to Houston. And then Stephon Diggs, with the drama that has surrounded him throughout his career, I will be curious to see how he sorts himself into the Houston Texans offense and how that works itself out. On the defensive side, though, I am all in on Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. That is going to be a monster pairing. It kind of reminds me of like the days of a Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis situation that they had back in Indianapolis. Like, that's the level I think those guys could potentially go to over the next few years here, because Will Anderson Jr. is extremely talented. Danielle Hunter, obviously extremely talented. I am really excited to see that pairing do its thing. Unfortunately for the Colts that I root for, they get them week 1. So we'll see. I hope it's not ugly, but I wouldn't be shocked if it was. Colts do have a good offensive line, though. They should be able to hold up. We also, on the Indy side, are interested in seeing how Anthony Richardson's going to look. Hoping for the best. I'm trying to, again, temper my expectations. Like the spiel I gave the Chicago Bears fans, I feel like a lot of people are hyping up Anthony Richardson just a little too much. This is technically like now his rookie season, except he should know the playbook and the overall scheme that they are running there on offense a lot better because he had a year to digest it. But there are some concerns to be had. Wide receiver right now, with Josh Downs being injured and missing however much time he's going to wind up missing, I'm curious what happens with the slot wide receiver role. You got Alec Pierce, Anthony Gould as 2 guys I could see working that slot receiver spot. Then on the defensive side, I have a few concerns about them. I'm really looking forward to seeing just the defensive line as a whole, being that the Colts are a team that are really good at getting after the quarterback and not having to blitz. They had the lowest blitz rate in the league last year, but we're still number 5 in sacks. They have a stout defensive line, even with Samson Ebukam going down, but it's the rest of the defense. Like, the linebacking room is not very deep beyond EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, and then you look at the secondary, and it's like Kenny Moore, a bunch of very young guys, promising talents, but young guys to say the least. Julian Blackmon is someone who's sandwiched in a couple of really good seasons outside of 2 injury-riddled seasons. So there's just a lot of uncertainty that I have as far as the defense goes with Indianapolis. I'm excited for the offense and having Anthony Richardson back, but I don't know necessarily where I stand on the defense just yet, and I have my reservations about them. The Texans overall, though, I mean, I think when you look at them and just what they've been building, they are a force, and I know a lot of people are saying they have a first-place schedule now. Everyone knows they're coming. It's not going to be as easy. C.J. Stroud, what he did last year was special, and I know there's people anticipating that sophomore slump. He feels like one of those guys that might get to skip that sophomore slump. C.J. Stroud looked like he had a point to prove last season, being essentially called stupid by a lot of people because of the stupid Wonderlic test. But he proved everyone wrong and then some, and the team got so much better. So much better. And I don't really know how he takes a step back this year. It could happen. I don't have it likely. For the matchup itself, though, what am I seeing? What am I expecting? I'm really expecting a tight contest here. I could see a lot of points, especially if Anthony Richardson comes in and he's able to lift this offense even further than they went last year, which was the number 11 scoring offense in the NFL, despite having Gardner Minshew at quarterback. It's going to be a fun one, but I am giving the edge to the Texans because I do think they are the overall better team. I have them winning 28-27. Fun contest, a lot of points, comes down to the wire, but I do think the Texans end up getting it done. Next, we'll move into Florida. We got a battle here in Miami as the Jacksonville Jaguars head further south to take on the Dolphins. The big question with Jacksonville really is just, what are they? Are they the 8-3 team or the team that fell off and won one last game following that 8-3 run the rest of the season here? I want to say that I think it is more it was more the 8-3 team than it was what we got at the end of the season. I think injuries really caught up with this team. Trevor Lawrence was playing battered and bruised, and I tip my cap to him for being willing to do that. And people need to not forget that, because that is an important piece to the Jacksonville Jaguars puzzle last season. The wide receiver room got revamped with the addition of Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. Calvin Ridley was obviously great in the offense there, but they were not going to pay him the money he was looking for, already paying Christian Kirk a fair amount of money, and I think he's a great receiver in this offense as well. Then you have the defensive side. Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker really look like they're starting to evolve into a 1-2 punch pairing on the edge of their defensive line as well. So this is a team that I think is going to make a bounce-back season and battle for that number 1 spot in the AFC South. But the question is, can they slow down Miami and all the horsepower they have on offense? Not 100% sure, but with my concerns in regards to Miami Dolphins defense and just the amount of new faces they have there taking over starting roles, they could have an opportunity to maybe take advantage of some of that. You also have a change at defensive coordinator as well. There's a lot of moving parts going on defensively in Miami that could lead to a better defense, but just a lot that's changing that leads a lot of gray area that could send you one way or the other, in my opinion. Like, you're looking at Jordan Poyer, Kendon Fuller, Jordan Brooks, Calais Campbell, Benito Jones, just to name a few of the guys that are all going to be eating up significant snaps this year that were not playing last season. So just a lot of changing going on. That being said, I think that probably leads to a game a little bit more higher scoring. I think it's going to be a really fun one. I think the Dolphins are one of those teams right now with the way the offense is built. Unless you have an elite defense, you're basically playing the game of not catch up, but keep up kind of game. Like, it's just, there's going to be a lot of points. And I think with the, again, questions I have around defense, I could see a higher scoring affair, one of the few of the weekend, but I do take the Dolphins in this one here, 31-27. The big questions that I have for this team this year, Miami-wise, is really just, how does Anthony Weaver take a retooled defense that was not necessarily bad last year, but wasn't great either, and turn them into from an average defense into a more elite type of defense? That's probably the biggest question I have for Miami this year. When I look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Can Trevor Lawrence, can he make that generational leap? Kind of starts with this first game here against a playoff contending team in Miami. Next game we're looking at here, a battle between the two other teams of the NFC South. We have Carolina heading into the Bayou to take on the New Orleans Saints. A lot of people will be watching what happens with this offense over here in Carolina. Bryce Young, Xavier Leggett, Deontay Johnson, Chuba Hubbard in the backfield. What does this offense look like? Can the offensive line take a step forward for this group here? I really don't know. I have any sort of expectation I have about the Carolina Panthers is not great, and I hate that, but I think that the Panthers are still maybe a year or two away. They're one of those rosters in the NFL that rank near the bottom, in my opinion, in terms of just overall talent, next to like the New England Patriots, and I don't want to write them off in week one, but I think that this could potentially be another long season, as the Panthers might be another year or two away from really getting back to competing in any shape or form. So I'll be interested in seeing what they do. My expectations are just not very high. Defensively, I think things could be a little bit better, because it wasn't too long ago that I was pounding the table about having a playoff caliber defense in Carolina that unfortunately just kind of fell off as the entire team fell off. But with the retooling that they did, bringing in guys like Josie Jewell, Jordan Fuller, A'Shawn Robinson, Jadeveon Clowney, this could be a solid unit on the defensive side of the ball, and one that I'm really looking forward to seeing. The Saints, the big thing that I'm really looking at is going to be that offensive line. You have Talise Fuaga, rookie left tackle now, Lucas Patrick coming in, who was let go by Chicago last year. Not necessarily one of the higher things you could say about yourself. And then you have right tackle Trevor Penning as well coming in, and he's basically taking over the Ryan Ramczyk spot, because it does not sound like his career is going to be going much longer with the injuries he's been dealing with. Defensively, a group I'm going to keep an eye on just because I'm interested is the linebacking group. We have Demario Davis on the middle, Pete Warner on the weak side. You got on the strong side Willie Gay. Those three guys put together one of the better linebacking groups in the NFL. If they can compete at a high level, this defense overall is a pretty good unit. The defensive line is one that I'm keeping an eye on, because it feels like you have aging talent in guys that might not reach the expectations you had hoped for. And so you're really hoping for like other position groups to really like overcorrect and step up for that. But I'm really excited to see what that linebacking group has over there in New Orleans. Now, as far as this matchup goes itself, what really decides it, I don't know. But like I said, I don't have a ton of expectation for what Carolina could be offensively. Like, I'm hoping they're better than last year. That is where I am right now, is just let's hope it's better than last year. But it's one of those things that until I see the progress and I see the improvement, I don't really know if I can bank on it from Carolina. So all eyes on Dave Canellis, all eyes on Brad Isaac and what they're doing on that side of the football there. Whoever steps up and can put themselves into the conversation of like a top 8 player or so, top 8, top 10 player in their respective position around the league, I think will be a massive boon for this offense, because there's not really any, honestly, you could say that about both sides of the ball, not even just the offense, but both sides of the ball. I don't really think you can go through the Carolina Panthers and say, this guy is a top 8 to 10 player at his position in the NFL right now. Like, they need a guy or two to step up and be that if this team wants to lift itself out of the gutter. So keeping a lookout for something like that is kind of where you have to be with Carolina right now. That all said, I am taking the Saints in this matchup here. I have them winning 24-10. I am a little bit on edge about what the Saints could potentially be this season here. I talked about this in Power Rankings, and I've talked about this even in the lead up to this season. I'm off the Derek Carr train. He is a serviceable quarterback, but in crunch time, just does not feel like he can get it done. Like, there are 3rd down and 4th down situations that I can think back on where he has just not stepped up and gotten the play done. And I'm ready to see the page kind of turn in New Orleans, because it feels like they never had the true reset after Drew Brees left, after Sean Payton left. Like, this team is kind of due for that. And when you look at the betting sites and what they're putting out there right now, Dennis Allen is unfortunately on a very hot seat, apparently, because he is a top candidate, if not the candidate, to be fired first. So just a interesting situation for the Saints to be in coming into the season, but I at least think they come out with a win in week 1. Again, 24-10, good, comfortable win, but we'll go from there. Next, we have a matchup that I don't really know if you're not a Giants or Vikings fan, and I hate to say it like this, but I don't know if you're really looking forward to this one if you're not one of those two people. Vikings fans, to put it simply, I am not a believer in Sam Darnold. I know Kevin O'Connell is an offensive guru, and, you know, he's known for what he's been able to do with Kirk Cousins, and of course previously Kirk Cousins, and of course with wide receiver Justin Jefferson, what Jordan Addison has done in his young career as well. But with TJ Hawkinson out, Jordan Addison dealing with an injury, and Sam Darnold at the quarterback spot, I'm a little bit concerned. I think Aaron Jones is a nice addition for the offense, and I'll be excited to see what he does there in Minnesota, but I am genuinely concerned about what this offense is going to look like in the 2024 season for the Vikings, and I'm not extremely high on the defense either. Losing Danielle Hunter, and on top of that, your secondary now has Shaq Griffin, who's been a bit of a journeyman the last few years, and Stephon Gilmore, who is not 2018, 2019, whenever it was that he won the All-Pro Award, cornerback Stephon Gilmore. He is a beyond 33 aging veteran, still very good at what he does, understands the game better than most type of guys, could use that to his advantage, but he's not locking down wide receiver one week in and week out like he used to be. It's one of those things that, like, I just have my reservations about the offense and the defense, and I'm a little bit worried about Minnesota going into this year. Not to say that I have too much better to say about the Giants. Again, offensive line was awful last year, and that is well documented. 85 sacks is a crazy number to even say out loud. And then to say that they were 20 sacks ahead of second place in their division rival Washington Commanders is an even crazier thing to say. For the Giants to be competitive this year, Daniel Jones has to be better. The offensive line must be better. And I don't know if this offensive line is like 30 to 40 sacks less better than they were last season. I just don't know about that. That is where I stand currently. That's a lot to ask for. That is a lot to ask for from a team. And I don't really know how a team makes up that much ground in a single offseason. We'll see if they do, but that's a lot to ask for. Thankfully, the defense, I think, is a fun group to watch this year. Secondary is young, but up and coming, in my opinion. The defensive front with Brian Burns now, Dexter Lawrence, and Kayvon Thibodeau, that's a really exciting group as well. I think the defense is going to be one of those groups that could be competitive for their offense, but I am just genuinely so worried about the Giants' offense going into this season here, and beyond like Malik Neighbors, I really don't know where the talent is on the offensive side of the ball. You have like Wan'Dale Robinson too, who I know has flashed in some spaces, but like there's just not a ton. Darius Slayton's another guy, I guess you could say, but like it's basically like the weight is on Malik Neighbors' shoulders. Like they're allowing him to wear a number that was retired on the team. So like the pressure is on for Malik Neighbors right now. I'm curious to see who else can really step up and be a weapon for this offense now. But now that Saquon Barkley's gone, like Malik Neighbors is the guy defenses are scheming for, and it's your rookie one wide receiver. So just something to think about. As for who I think the matchup goes to, I am really leaning heavily on the New York Giants in this one here. I have them winning 20-10. Not like a runaway by any means, but I could see the Giants defense giving the Vikings and Sam Darnold some problems. But I also see that the Giants offense is probably shooting themselves in the foot, keeping the score a little bit lower. So that's kind of where I stand there. Next, we're going over to the West Coast, and we have ourselves the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Chargers. Everything I could say about the Raiders is exciting on offense and even on defense, except for the quarterback spot. I don't want to sound like I'm slighting Gardner Minshew because I'm appreciative for the work that he did in Indianapolis as a Colts fan last year, but I really wish that the Raiders had a guy that you could look at and go, he's like top 12, top 10 in the league, and he's got so much talent to work with, because your wide receiver room includes Jacoby Myers, who is extremely reliable. It also includes Devontae Adams, who is one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. You have two very young, talented, athletically gifted tight ends in Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers. You got a capable running back in Zamir White. I am so excited to see what this Raiders team looks like, because they're going to be a great unit. Offense might be what holds them back, though. I like Gardner Minshew. He's not going to blow you games, but I don't think he's going to win you games either, is the problem. So you're staring down like a 9-8, 10-7 type of season, unless you get like lucky in a game or two. The Chargers, on the other hand, I don't really know what to make of them. You have Justin Herbert, and then you got a bunch of guys on the offense, and it's just a matter of like who steps up and how much can you really believe in some of the guys that are on this offense here. Like Gus Edwards, great in short yardage situations. J.K. Dobbins has blown out his knee the last couple of seasons. What does he really have left in the tank? How is that going to affect his play style at all coming into this season now? And then the wide receiver room is Ladd McConkey, Joshua Palmer, and DJ Chark as your starting trio. And your first-round wide receiver in Quentin Johnston is not your starter. So I'm worried. Thankfully, you have Justin Herbert. You have a great coach in Jim Harbaugh. I think that the Chargers are going to be a scrappy team, but I can't envision them doing a ton this year. I really cannot. And like the defense is not great over there. I'm excited to see Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa running side by side because Khalil Mack racked up like 17 sacks on his own last year. So if Joey Bosa's healthy, he's creating problems on the opposite side. The defense could get a huge boost, but the defense is also one of those things where it's like I look at those two guys, Asante Samuel Jr. and Derwin James are like the big names on the defense, and that's about it. And I'm just not super high on the Chargers coming into this season right now. Whereas, like, I look at the Raiders' defense, and just their defensive line alone scares the crap out of me. You got Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, and Malcolm Koonce is a guy that not a lot of people maybe outside of Las Vegas know, but he is a standout guy on that defensive front as well. And that's just the defensive line on its own. Never mind what that linebacking room looks like with Divine Diablo. Cornerback room is also really well built together as well. Like, there's a lot to be excited about with this Raiders team, especially how good they looked in the second half of last year. As for who I think is going to win, though, I'm leaning Raiders on this one here. I think it's a lower scoring contest. The defense is definitely going to win out and create some problems here. I think the Chargers are going to need to take some time before they really come into form here. I see some people marking them as a playoff team, and I think that's a little bit too high of an expectation realistically for where the Chargers are. Like, yeah, you have a franchise quarterback, and yeah, Jim Harbaugh has had some great stops in his career, but there's no guarantee that he flips this team into an 11-6 playoff contender, 12-5 team in one season after them kind of falling flat on their face last year. And I know Justin Herbert wasn't playing, but the talent depletion issue of this team is a real thing that they're going to have to overcome as well. The offensive line is like the most exciting thing in my opinion about this team because they're a tough group and they've got Joe Alt over there as well, who I have labeled as like the most sure thing coming out of this draft. But I do have my concerns about the Chargers and where they're going to go. Next, we have the Denver Broncos taking on the Seattle Seahawks in what was supposed to be a Russell Wilson homecoming against his former team, but he's not on the Denver Broncos anymore. Instead, it's Bo Nix leading the way, and I'm really excited to see how he looks. The conversation around him right now is red hot. Everyone's looking forward to seeing how he does. Just remember, he was facing vanilla defenses going through the preseason here. Do not be surprised if he struggles at all. Don't be surprised if any of these rookie quarterbacks struggle at all, no matter how good they looked in the preseason here. The defense is what I'm really looking forward to, especially at the outside linebacker spot, those guys going after the quarterback. Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning, Nick Bonito, and Jonah Ellis are a very deep group of pass rushers on the edge of that defensive line, and I think those guys could be very good for Denver here in helping out what is a secondary that feels like Pat Surtain and Brandon Jones, I believe, is over there as well now, and kind of like a who's who everywhere else. PJ Locke you also have there, who I know has flashed in some situations as well. But overall, I'm interested in seeing what Denver ends up turning into this season, but I think this will be a step in the right direction here. I'm not expecting like a massive leap from Denver, but a definite step in the right direction type of season. The Seahawks side of things, I will be looking at the offensive line, especially now that you have some changes with Laken Tomlinson taking over at left guard, Connor Williams at center, George Font at right tackle. Definitely curious how the O-line looks. Geno Smith is one of those guys that I think came back down a little bit to earth last season, and I'm curious if that happens and turns into a free fall, like it continues, or if he can maybe reach back to the heights of his first season in Seattle. You also have a defense that is littered with talent, and it has not been as good as the paper value that we are given, I feel like, out of Seattle over the last couple of years. I'm really excited to see what Mike Macdonald does with this team here, because with the talent that they have, there's no reason that this team was 22nd against the pass, 30th against the rush, 27th in points allowed. Like, they should be better than that with the amount of talent that they have there. And I think they are, but we'll see how long it takes Mike Macdonald to take this defense from great talent on paper to great talent on the football field. That's really what I'm looking for. As for this game, though, what it comes down to, rookie head coach over in Seattle is making this less of a sure thing, in my opinion, for them, and I'm really not sure what the offense is going to look like. I have a lot of questions for what Ryan Grubb's going to do over there with all the talent that they have. Like, the talent is there, but what does the team wind up looking like? And something in my gut, for whatever reason, is telling me Denver and go with Denver. So I'm going to lean with the Broncos on this one here. I might regret it later. Not a big deal if I do, but something's telling me Broncos, low-scoring, 19-16 affair. Offense maybe has some issues in Seattle. Seattle defense might give Denver Broncos offense some issues, but I think there's a chance that Broncos could maybe pull the upset off here. Next, we have one of the more exciting contests, in my opinion. We're looking at the Dallas Cowboys heading into Cleveland to take on the Browns. The Browns had arguably one of the best defenses in the NFL last season. The Cowboys, one of the top offenses in the NFL last season, and now they're going to smash into each other head-to-head to kick off week number 1. There have been some changes on the O-line in Dallas. CeeDee Lamb has been paid. Dak Prescott has not. Ezekiel Elliott has returned to the fold. This offense should still be pretty good. Dak Prescott has been a very good quarterback for the duration of his career. How good you think he is, that is a conversation I'm not having, but he has been a pretty good quarterback, I should say. I'm curious to see how he handles everything going through this year if he does not get a new contract, how that affects things, any sort of animosity, if that creates anything, very curious. Defensively is where I think there could potentially be some concerns about depth on the D-line and also just what this linebacking room is going to look like in this team here. But I do still think Dallas is primed to be at least a playoff team. I think their floor is the 7th seed in the NFC. That's kind of where I'm sitting with them right now. I'd be shocked if they flat out miss the playoffs, and I have them as floor is the 7th seed. The Browns, on the other hand, defense probably going to be really good again. I'm very curious to see if Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith on the edges there can just push things even further and get even better as a pairing because they were fantastic together last year. But the offensive side of things, Nick Chubb's still not back, so Jerome Ford's going to lead the way. Jerry Jeudy was brought in to pair along with Amari Cooper. You have Elijah Moore over there as well. And then, of course, Deshaun Watson. He's coming back from injury. How's the shoulder? What is this offense going to look like minus Nick Chubb with Deshaun Watson under center? Very curious to see. That all being said, I'm really not so sure about this game and who comes out victorious, but the one change that I'm very curious to see about Dallas is going to be at defensive coordinator and Mike Zimmer and what he's able to do with this defense, because Dan Quinn obviously left to go be head coach of the Washington Commanders. I don't know what to expect from Dallas's defense right now. Again, depth is a concern. You're very top-heavy. Deron Bland is now out for who knows how long. There are some concerns to be had with Dallas right now. They're not coming into this season the way I think they were last season, so it's fair to have some questions. Offensively, you have the questions for the Browns with Deshaun Watson. How's he going to look after missing more significant time? I do think the defense looks good. I think they could create some fits for Dallas, and I think I'm going to lean Cleveland on this one, and I have them winning 26-23. Could be wrong about this one. Wouldn't be surprised if I was, but something's telling me Cleveland with that defense gets the job done. We then have Washington heading into Tampa Bay to take on the Bucs. This one here is a fun one. I really like Jaden Daniels coming into Washington. I'm just super concerned about the O-line. For the same reasons I was worried about with the New York Giants, I have the same concerns because this team also allowed 65 sacks last year. Not 85, but still a lot in 65. This group, if they can get even 15 to 20 sacks better, a little bit more of a realistic ask, I guess you could say, out of an offensive line, but definitely something that I will be watching closely and how Jaden Daniels is able to deal with that if it doesn't get much better. The defensive side, a lot of changes. You're bringing in a ton of guys, vets like Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, who's been around, a Super Bowl champion, Dorrance Armstrong on the D-line, Jeremy Chin over in the back of the at the safety spot. So a lot of changes going on defensively there. The Buccaneers, the big thing for me is just can they run the football this year? They have a little bit of a youth movement going on the defensive side of things. I've talked about this right now. You're looking at guys like KJ Britt, Kalijah Cansey, Tyke Smith at nickelback, Yaya Diaby at the outside linebacker spot. A lot of guys that are taking over starting roles that are going to see significant upticks in snaps this year. It's the offense and their ability to run the football. If the if the Bucs can even get to an average rushing attack and get to like 16th in the league, that would be a vast improvement from the what was 87 yards a game they were averaging last year, which was a league low. So if they could just figure out how to run the ball even slightly, the offense balances out, opens things up in the passing game, and I think the Buccaneers could be primed for a really threatening run this year. I have them winning 25-21. Think it's going to be a good game here. I like the Bucs odds, especially in the NFC South this year, but it starts at week 1 and establishing a run game. For the Sunday night football game, Los Angeles Rams taking on the Lions. Now, the last time these two teams met, playoffs, Lions won by a hair. Really fun game. I'm expecting a lot of the same. And there's a good chance we get more points than we saw in that game because the Rams defense losing Aaron Donald and Ernest Jones this offseason here, two big names that have been on the defense for the last few years now. Aaron Donald, obviously, first ballot Hall of Famer. I will be very interested in Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, if they can improve on their seasons last year, if they can get even better and be bigger parts of this offense, or if it was just flash in the pan 2023 stuff. We'll see, because that does happen. But the defensive side, I am really interested in what that front looks like here with Kobe Turner and Bobby Brown trying to fill up the space Aaron Donald is leaving. You also bring in guys like Braden Fisk and Jared Verse from Florida State through the draft. There's a lot of youth and a lot of young talent being relied upon to replace some big, important names on that defense. The Lions side of things, Jamison Williams needs to step up. It is his time to shine and be the wide receiver that they drafted him in the first round for, and I think we're going to get that because he's finally going to get to start the season in week number 1, and I'm looking forward to it. Sam Laporta, he looks like he has a chance to be the best tight end in the NFL. I know it's probably Travis Kelce right now, or depending on who you ask, maybe it's George Kittle. Depends on what you like, what you want from your tight ends, but Sam Laporta well on his way. You have Jahmyr Gibbs dealing with a hammy injury during the preseason. If he can bounce back sooner rather than later, the 1-2 punch combo with he and David Montgomery, really fun pairing there. Coupled with the fact that the Lions basically went all in on adding to their defense this offseason, we have ourselves a really fun Lions team on our hands, and I'm looking forward to watching this team play. I think these two teams match up pretty well with each other. Really good quarterbacks, pretty good wide receiver group on both sides. I would say that you might have a little bit more on the Rams than you do with the Lions right now, just because you need Jamison Williams to establish himself, but you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, whereas like the Rams have Puka Nacua, who looked great last year, and Cooper Kupp. But then running back wise, you could probably argue the edge for Detroit, although Kyron Williams and now a potential uptick in production with Blake Corum coming in from Michigan could be a fun 1-2 punch over there in LA as well. Like the offenses stack up really well against each other. The defenses, both far from being perfect last year. There is a chance that we see like an uptick from Detroit's defense, maybe a downtick from the Rams defense is kind of what I'm expecting to see with so much youth taking over in LA. But I do think I like the Lions just a little bit more on this one. I have them winning 26-23. Should be a fun contest and a really entertaining one for Sunday Night Football. And then to wrap up week number 1, a headliner fitting of week 1 Monday Night Football. We are looking at the New York Jets going into San Francisco on the West Coast for some MNF football. Aaron Rodgers comes to play against a team that has given him nightmare problems for the duration of the last handful of years of his career. He gets the opportunity to go in, snuff out what is supposed to be another potential Super Bowl run for the San Francisco 49ers. Their hope, obviously, to win it this time, not just appear. You have changes on the O-line to keep an eye on. New left tackle, new left guard, new right tackle in Tyron Smith, John Simpson, and Morgan Moses, respectively. The defensive line is something I'm looking at. Pretty talented group. But Jermaine Johnson, Michael Clemens, and Will McDonald, the fourth, those are your guys at the defensive end spots. I really want to see them step up and become like the menacing forces on the edge that they have been drafted to be, especially Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. Those two guys are first-round draftees, first-round talents. I would love to see a little bit more from them this year. 49ers, looking at Trent Williams, looking at Brandon Ayuk. Do the holdouts affect anything? That's really my only question on that side. Defensively, I am curious how the linebacking pairing is going to look right now because you, of course, have Fred Warner leading the way. Don't get me wrong. Devondre Campbell's coming in. You also have Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who's kind of working in the spot that Dre Greenlaw is supposed to be in, but obviously he's working back from his injury he sustained in the Super Bowl, literally just walking onto the field. And then you got a guy like Leonard Floyd who's coming in to be paired alongside with Nick Bosa. So a lot of fun stuff to look at with San Fran. As for who wins this one, there is a lot to like about both of these teams here. You can't even really look at the Jets offense last year and talk any of the numbers that they dealt with or just like the issues and whatnot, because not the same thing in the slightest. You have Aaron Rodgers under center now. I am assuming you are getting far better quarterback play from Aaron Rodgers than you were Zach Wilson last year and whatever else was going on at the quarterback spot. The defenses of both these teams are probably going to run this matchup quite a bit. I think that it is going to be a very defensive and heavy kind of slugfest. I wouldn't be shocked if the game total score doesn't exceed 40 points because, again, typically defenses win out early in the season, offenses start to catch up and get in a rhythm, and then it becomes, a high-scoring affair by the midseason. But I think we get a low-scoring contest, not a ton of points. Both sides are going to take some heavy shots. We are going to get a haymaker or two from both offenses, though. Aaron Rodgers should come out. I think he's going to establish that this offense is going to be a little bit better, at least, than they were the last season or two without him being there. But San Francisco is just so talented. They've got so much in the tank. And I love the direction Brock Purdy is heading. Statistically, when you look at the numbers he had last year, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, no question. And I have a hard time picking against them right now. So I'm leaning San Francisco 49ers. I'll take them for the W. I have them winning. Again, not a high-scoring contest because I think defenses will be problematic. 21-20. Give me the San Francisco 49ers for the W to wrap up week 1 of the NFL season. Those are my picks. Let me know in the comment section down below. What am I getting right? What am I getting wrong? What do you want to see from week 1? What are you excited for the season? Would love to hear, discuss with you all in the comments down below, but that's it for me. If you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. See you all next time. Have a good one.